Okay, technically speaking, this is a question we've already answered in the past. When I did my Power Rangers the Movie video games video, I gave a brief overview of what happened in the second season of Power Rangers as we run up to the 1995 movie. And it's also something that we've touched on in the discussions we've had rewatching the film for Watch Party. Obviously not all of you have access to Watch Party, cheap plug to join the Patreon or become a Batcave YouTube member. So let's go through it here and settle this once and for all. Season 1 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had become such a massive success that it actually presented the producers of the show with a few problems. Firstly, they'd already had to go back to Japan and get them to shoot some bespoke footage to fill in some of the gaps for the 60 episodes required for Season 1, but now the footage had more or less dried up and they had to make a decision to either drop the Zyuranger aesthetic or move on to something that tied into the current season of Super Sentai, Dairanger, or figure out a way of hanging on to what they had. The thing is though, Power Rangers was a massive cash cow, and while the original toy lineup had been made using the Japanese moulds, they just started to make their own merchandise in the US. Throwing all that brand recognition in the bin to give it a refresh so soon would have been a huge gamble. So here's what they did. They decided to keep the old design for the Rangers and also keep the original villain, Rita, who was Bandora in Zyuranger. But rather than her being the main villain, she'd be recast and then they'd rebuild the set with a new villain becoming the main antagonist. Enter Lord Zed, a character with no basis in Super Sentai. He'd now run things from the moon base, with Goldar, whose costume had been rebuilt at the end of Season 1, and a new lineup of putties, who are not the same as the Golem Soldier putties from Zyuranger. Even new versions of Squat, Babu and Finster are along for the journey too. All footage of the Rangers, when they're unmorphed, was shot in the US anyway, but now they would need to shoot new footage of the morphed Rangers fighting these new Lord Zed spec putties. The most expensive footage to film was always the Zord footage, so while they were making enough money to bite the bullet and produce new sequences of the Rangers fighting on the ground, the old Zords had to make way for new ones. It's written into the story that Lord Zed brings a new challenge, so the original set of Zords are no longer up to that challenge. So they have to make way for the Thunder Zords. These are the mech that we would see in Dairanger. All of the Zord footage from this point on would be from Dairanger, but with new cockpit footage showing the US Ranger lineup, and a new introduction clip that shows the old Zords transforming into the new ones. So the morphing sequence would actually still use the old power coins, hence why the suits still look like dinosaurs. It sounds messy trying to describe it, but honestly it doesn't seem that weird in the show. But there was still the issue of what to do with Tommy. He'd become one of the most popular characters in the show, but there was going to be no more Dragon Zord footage, so how do we save the Green Ranger? Well, we don't. Much of the first half of the second season is dedicated to the Green Ranger's powers failing. He'd eventually be replaced by the White Ranger, who would become the only Dairanger to make the jump across to the US show, but also brought with him all of the Kibba Ranger footage and all of the footage of his Zord too. So that's the groundwork set, and this is where we move on to the movie. Now, the movie is essentially all about the introduction of the ninja powers that would become the staple powers for Season 3, in a similar way to the Thunder powers becoming the staple for Season 2. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that, yes, the movie is canon to the US show. After all, the second movie, Turbo, is undeniably canon in that it introduced the turbo powers, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. In the film, a new villain, Ivan Ooze, has been unearthed at an Angel Grove construction site, and Lord Zed plans to join forces with him to destroy the Power Rangers. However, Ivan chooses to turn down the offer and work alone, but does at least agree to bring Goldar along with him, as well as a character we've never seen before, Mordant. We have no idea who Mordant is, and he never appears in any iteration of the Mighty Morphin TV show, although there is a similar character that appears in some of the early comic books. Ivan Ooze destroys the command center and leaves Zordon dying. Now, we already know this is a big sticking point for me, because I've spoken at length about how Zordon in the TV show is trapped in a time warp and the tube is merely his link to this Earth. He's not physically there, Whereas here, in the movie, the tube acts like a life support system. Ivan brainwashes the parents of Angel Grove with his ooze and forces them to unearth his own version of Zords, the Ectomorphicons. He also introduces his new Tengu warriors, produced from his snot, to replace the previous putty-style drones that we see earlier in the film. In order to destroy Ivan and restore Zordon, the Rangers are sent to another planet to go on a quest to discover a new power. It's there that they're given the powers of the Ninjetti by Dulcea. Insert obligatory "You're welcome, dads." These also give the Rangers new Zord identifiers, but they're not random. They're based on supposed spirit animals, which explains why Adam is a bit disappointed in being a frog. But also, Dulcea shows her spirit animal is an owl, although it's interesting because she doesn't have the same Ninjetti robes, she instead stays in green, if any of you notice what she was wearing as opposed to what she wasn't. A little bit like Rita in the 2017 movie, who is also in green. So I wonder if she's meant to be a green Ninja Ranger with an owl Zord. There may actually be something there. Anyway, the Rangers still need to find the Great Power to actually be able to morph and call upon the Zords to fight, so head out into the jungle. Once they reach the temple and beat up some stone guardians, they're presented with a stone pyramid which has all of their spirit animals conveniently engraved on it. Despite it clearly being the case that their spirit animals could have been anything, not just what was preordained by this pyramid thing. Now, they're referred to as the sacred animals, and the Rangers are given the ability to morph, and while their helmets still show the old designs, their chest plates now carry the designs of the new Zords, and their power coins have also changed. The thing is though, this is completely different to what we see in the TV show. In Season 3, they introduce a brother for Rita, called Rito, and as we've covered in our video comparing Season 3 to Kaku Ranger, this is actually one of the villains from that show and has no link to Bandora from Zyuranger. With some careful mixing of Dai Ranger and Kaku Ranger Zord footage, plus a few sequences shot in the US, the Thunder Zords are destroyed. As such, Zordon sends the Rangers on a quest to find Ninjor, someone who supposedly forged the original power coins. As a wedding present to Lord Zed and Rita, Rito gifts them with some eggs that hatch into the Tenga warriors, who had become the secondary villain drones, similar to the putties. The Rangers eventually find Ninjor, again a character from Kaku Ranger, and he agrees to bestow upon them new powers and new Zords: the White Falcon, the Red Ape, the Black Frog, Yellow Bear, Blue Wolf, and Pink Crane. The ninja powers would also become somewhat of a mid-morph phase before going into the full-on morph sequence. This would work in more or less the same way, except the Rangers no longer called upon their Dinozords, and the morphers would now contain new power coins. But of course, the suits would still look exactly the same, including the white Tiger Zord symbol on Tommy's shield. And from this point, Ninjor would also become a new ally. So in reality, the 1995 movie is a bit of an outlier in Power Rangers lore. While it was a success, and while it didn't review particularly well, it scratched just about every itch Power Rangers fans could have hoped for. The only thing is, it's not even close to being canon to the TV show, which in some ways makes it a little bit more forgettable. And while I hated Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, it's important because it's tied into the entire lore of the series. Then again, the fact that the 1995 film is basically a standalone story also makes it a little bit more rewatchable. At the end of the day, we're not here to review the film, we're just here to answer a question. And the answer is no. The 1995 Power Rangers movie is not canon to the TV show. But for deep dives into the TV show's lore, I'd recommend my What's the Difference series that compares the US show to its Japanese origins. But until the next one, I'll see you later.